Tonight on Troy TrojanVision News, one Troy restaurant has closed its doors for good, but there may be more to the story than meets the eye. We'll have more coming up.
The president orders an additional strike on a target linked to Iran. I'm Natalie Brand at the White House with the message the administration says it's trying to send.
And in celebration of Veterans Day, we look into Troy University's relationship with the military. We'll have that and more coming up. Stay tuned. Troy TrojanVision News starts right now.
From Troy University's Broadcast and Digital Network Earl Hutto Studio, this is Troy TrojanVision News.
Hello and welcome to Troy TrojanVision News for November 9th. I'm Mackenzie Foster. And I'm Emma Ellis. Thank you for joining us. The Troy Santa Fe restaurant, which has been in Troy for more than 10 years, has closed its doors for good. On November 7th, they made their official announcement via Facebook. However, former employees say they were not notified of this closure. It was a normal day for former Troy Santa Fe employees. That is, until they showed up to work. When employees showed up for work that day, they were greeted by a sign on the door saying they were closed for remodeling. However, employees later found out from a Facebook post they were closed for good.
I've spoken to two of the managers. One of them said that nobody found out until last Thursday, but didn't tell any of us employees at all.
Even worse, Adamson says she found out she lost her job via social media.
We just found out from Facebook. That's how most of us found out.
According to Adamson, when employees tried to share their frustrations about the situation in the comments of Santa Fe's post, they were unable to do so.
All of us employees actually rated the comments, and they were deleting all of our comments. They were making it to where none of us could actually comment. Nobody in general can comment on the original post now.
Adamson says many of her former coworkers are now unable to provide for their families right before the holiday season.
Most of the ones who work there have kids. It's right before Christmas. You could have, in my perspective, I think they could have said something sooner to let us know that, hey, you need to find a job or be looking for one so you can support your family. I feel betrayed, honestly. I feel hurt.
TrojanVision attempted to contact Santa Fe via multiple avenues. As of this report, we have had no response. It says business had been slow and the owner could no longer afford to keep the business running.
Saturday is Veterans Day, but do you know the extent of Troy's relationship with the military? Simon Schuessler explains.
Veterans Day is meant to be a day to sit back and reflect on the sacrifices that countless men and women have made to serve our country. If you take a look at Troy, you won't have to search far to see the impact that veterans have had on our own campus.
You look at Ralph Adams, one of the former chancellors that was here, and then that segues into Dr. Hawkins, and he was in the Marine Corps. We served, and not at the same time together, but I followed his footsteps into Vietnam.
Troy's campus is home to both Army and Air Force ROTC programs, but all branches of the military have made their imprint on the university. And
you look at those who served in leadership roles at the university. We've had Army colonels, Marine Corps colonels, we've had Navy captains, and we've had Air Force generals. So the sense of service to the country exists at the top level, but also at the younger level.
And it isn't just leadership that plays a role in this relationship. As Dr. Schmidt states, he sees that students have bought into Troy's relationship with veterans and the military as well.
The pride that our sororities and fraternities have, you see that pride at football games. The walk hard that the ATOs have is a good example of pride and flag waving at the university.
No matter how you celebrate and honor Veterans Day, Dr. Schmidt wants you to acknowledge a side of service that doesn't get talked about as much.
When you think about freedom, think of those who sacrifice, not only the active duty person, but also the families at home.
Simon Schuessler, Troy TrojanVision News.
Now, according to the university's website, Troy caps the cost of tuition at $250 per credit hour for spouses and dependents of active duty soldiers. It also applies to the National Guard members through the Troy Military and Family Scholarship.
And Troy University's Nutrition Club set up a table in Trojan Center today to raise awareness about diabetes. Jacob Evans, an Associate Nutrition Club member, has a brother with type 1 diabetes. Evans says they have no family history with type 1 diabetes, so when his brother was diagnosed, it was a big shock to their family. Evans says it's important for everyone to know the symptoms because it could happen to anyone.
Signs and symptoms, so I think it's very important to know those signs and symptoms and to be aware that type 1 can just pop out of nowhere, and even if you have no family history of it at all, you can still get it. It's kind of just, I don't want to say luck of the draw, but it's really just a big genetic component.
To learn more about symptoms or how to help people with diabetes, you can go to cdc.gov/diabetes.
It's that time for the yearly debate. Are you a fan of the shorter days or do you miss the long days of summer? Reporter Emily Clegg talks to Troy students about their opinion on gaining an extra hour.
It's finally fall, which means that the leaves change colors, the temperatures get cooler, and the holidays are quickly approaching. But the changing of the season also means that it's time to turn back the clock through daylight savings.
If somebody's not a morning person, they don't get up early and they wake up later in the day, they're probably not going to get a lot of the daytime because it gets darker sooner. That can negatively impact them.
One of those people that I can't fall asleep when I get home. I have to unwind for a while when I get home, and I like having that personal time. And I don't get as much of that when it starts to get dark earlier because I'm already so tired when I'm getting off of work.
Daylight savings time can be difficult to adjust to, from remembering to set your clocks to walking out at 5 p.m. and it already being dark out. But some students say that this is a change that is welcomed.
I do like when it gets, darker a little earlier. I guess I associate, holidays around this time with when it gets darker earlier, so I would say I like that. I'm a big Christmas guy.
Whether you favor the change or not, most can agree that they've enjoyed the extra hour that they've gained.
I really like daylight savings because we get an extra hour this time of year. We do lose it the other time of year, but I think it's kind of fun to get that extra hour. It's like a little present at the end of the day kind of thing.
It helped me a lot because when you do work overnight, you do get sleep deprived, and it just made me feel rejuvenated.
Emily Clegg, Troy, TrojanVision News.
Now, although this season we gained an hour, we will lose an hour in the spring.
Turning to state news, mixed reactions continue following the death of former Smith Station Mayor Bubba Copeland.
That includes the two women who say they feel they have been victimized.
Copeland took his life after photos were posted online of Copeland dressed as a woman and said he featured local women as the subjects of online fiction.
Ansley Summerlin said she was shocked to find out her name and photos had been posted online without her permission.
She says her name was used without her knowledge in an online story she believes was written by Copeland.
He proceeded to use my first and middle name on these sites, and I believe there are about 9 sites now that I have, 5 or 6 photos of my face and my name across the internet.
Public visitation was held Tuesday at Vance Brooks Funeral Home in Phoenix City. The funeral was earlier this afternoon.
In other news, Alabama has scheduled the date for the first inmate to be executed by nitrogen hypoxia.
Kenneth Eugene Smith's execution is set for sometime between January 25th and January 26th.
His original execution was called off last year after the state couldn't properly set the lethal injection IV line before the death warrant expired.
Smith then asked to use nitrogen gas instead of lethal injection. In May, the U.S. Supreme Court approved his request.
Now, death by nitrogen hypoxia deprives the brain and body of oxygen and kills the inmate by suffocation.
Smith was convicted for the 1988 murder of Elizabeth Dorleen Sennett and a murder for hire plot.
His attorneys say they'll continue to fight the death penalty sentence. Moving to international news, President Biden ordered more airstrikes on targets in Syria in retaliation for attacks on U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq carrying out anti-terrorism activities.
Natalie Brand has more details from the White House.
The U.S. carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria on what the Pentagon says was a weapons storage facility used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard.
Mr. President, why did you strike Iran's Revolutionary Guard?
Because they stuck up.
And President Biden, you plan to hit them again?
They stuck up.
There have been at least 4 more attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria since the strike, resulting in what the Pentagon says are a few minor injuries. All of those hurt have returned to duty. From October 17th until now, Iranian-backed forces have carried out 46 attacks on U.S. bases. The Pentagon says it remains concerned about potential escalation in the region. The administration is trying to prevent that while also defending U.S. forces.
We're not looking for conflict with Iran. We've made that very clear, but we'll do what's necessary to protect our personnel, be they military or civilian.
These attacks have been on the rise since the Israel-Hamas war began, with about half happening after the first U.S. airstrike in Syria on October 26th.
We have sent a strong signal, not just to Iran, but to other actors in the region, that we don't want to see this conflict with Hamas widen or deepen. And thus far, we haven't seen that happen.
The U.S. has increased its military presence in the Middle East for deterrence, in addition to the nearly 3,500 U.S. service members in Iraq and Syria as part of a coalition to defeat ISIS. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Now an update for the entertainment industry. The longest actors' strike in history is finally over.
That's right. Last night, union leaders voted unanimously in favor of a tentative deal, which they're calling a major victory.
Carter Evans has more from outside Sony Studios in California.
The celebrations have begun now that the actors' strike is finally over.
It's been a long 118 days, and we are so happy.
So far, it's been a very, very strong chorus of excitement and approval.
Chief union negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland says details of the tentative 3-year agreement, which striking actors had been fighting for since mid-July, won't be released until tomorrow at the earliest.
Are actors going to be happy with this deal?
I think so. I mean, this is the first time that we've ever had a deal that was valued at over $1 billion in gains during the term of the contract, and that really means a lot.
Here's what we do know. SAG says the tentative deal includes not only a first-time bonus for streaming, but also unprecedented provisions for consent and compensation that will protect members from the threat of AI.
We intentionally designed, especially our AI protections, to set standards that can actually evolve with changes in the industry. We don't want to see performers replaced. We want to see performers augmented and lifted up.
The studios say they're looking forward to getting back to work. The Producers Alliance says the tentative agreement represents a new paradigm, including the largest increase in minimum wages in the last 40 years.
How quickly will we see productions resume?
The studios are going to try to ramp up production as quickly as possible.
Matthew Bellany says the demand for actors' services might now outstrip supply.
There's going to be a logjam. Everybody is going to be fighting over these actors because we've got 6-8 months of productions that all want to shoot at the same time. And actors can only be in one place at one time.
So actors can technically get back to work today, but what they can also do is start promoting films and TV programs that they've been working on. And that's good news for shows that are completed but still haven't been released yet. And also for all those postponed award shows, including the Oscars, which was really up in the air until this agreement last night. Carter Evans, CBS News, Culver City, California.
You know, Mackenzie, I have been enjoying these sunny skies, but I mean, it's November. I want those cool temperatures.
Absolutely, Emma. Hopefully it can cool down before the weekend so y'all aren't sweating. Emily, what can you tell us?
Well, ladies, it looks like y'all are in luck. We will be seeing some temperatures later in the week, but I'll let y'all know more about that coming up after the break.
And most of it can't be summed up in a headline or subject line or 140 characters. So when you're ready to know more than just what's happening outside your window, around the country, and across the globe, we'll bring you the voices who can tell you why.
This is All Things Considered.
Listen every afternoon from 3 to 5:30 p.m. on Troy Public Radio.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Now, your weather on Troy Trojan Vision News.
We'll take a look at our quad cam. As you can see, it's a lot darker this time of year, which these darker skies means cooler temperatures, but I'll let y'all know more about that coming up after our current conditions. Our skies are currently fair and the temperature is a little warmer at 80 degrees. The humidity is currently at 41% with the pressure at 29.99 inches and winds coming from the south at 7 miles an hour. Let's see, moving on to our daily weather almanac. Our high today so far has been 82 degrees. Our record high was 84 degrees in 2022. Our low today was 46 degrees, which is thankfully a lot warmer than our record low of 27 degrees in 1941. Take a look at those temperatures around the state. Huntsville is currently at 74 degrees. Birmingham is at 76 degrees. Phoenix City is a little warmer at 79 degrees. Montgomery, Troy, and Dothan are all at 80 degrees, and Mobile is at 81 degrees. Take a look at those temperatures across the south. As you can see, we have some cooler temperatures in the north making their way towards our areas, but we won't see those cooler temperatures until around the weekend. Moving on to across the country. As you can see, that trend seems to be the same with the cooler temperatures being out to the northwest, and it warms up the closer you get to the southern United States. Take a look at our forecast. On Friday, we do have some showers that should be over the entire state of Alabama, so we should be experiencing some showers tomorrow. And the same goes for Saturday. Those temperatures will move, or those showers will move down a little south, but we still should be experiencing some rain here in Troy. On Sunday, again, should be experiencing a little rain, and then moving on to Monday, those temperatures should be moving more southern, but again, we could still be experiencing some showers. Let's see, take a look at tonight. We have a low of 60 degrees with partly cloudy skies and winds coming out of the southwest at 6 miles an hour. Moving on to tomorrow, we have a high of 71 degrees with a chance of showers and winds out of the northeast at 5 miles an hour. Taking a look at our 4-day forecast, we can expect a lot of rain this week up until Monday. We see that percentage of chance in the 60% range. And this has been your weather. Now back to the news desk.
Thank you, Emily. Coming up on TrojanVision News, a pair of veterans find stardom on TikTok. We'll tell you why coming up in today's Take a Look at This.
And what exactly is the Trojan defensive identity? Dylan Seymour will let you know more coming up in sports.
He's a smart boy, and he's gonna be okay. Okay, try to calm him again. There's no reception. Everything is down. Try! I can't. Try already! Nothing's working. Well, just everything's down. Do you think he's on his way? Please. Is he okay? Laura. Please tell me he's okay. I need you to calm down. What? It's my baby. This is so bad. He's out there by himself.
Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov.
Now, the latest in Trojan sports on TrojanVision News.
Welcome to your TrojanVision Sports. I'm Dylan Seymour. Senior Katie Rowe prepares as the only Trojan competing tomorrow morning in the NCAA South Regional at the Mark Bostick Golf Course in Gainesville, Florida. Rose competed for the Trojans in 5 meets in 2023, totaling 24 meets since joining the program in 2019. Tomorrow also marks her third South Regional appearance, competing in 2019 and 2021. Head coach Brian Cunningham says Katie has had a solid performance racing this fall. He is excited to see her compete against the best the South Region has to offer. The meet begins at 8:30 in the morning for the women as Rose takes on the 6K event against the top racers in the South Region. In preparation of the beginning of the new basketball season, Detroit women's basketball team hosted the West Alabama Tigers on Monday afternoon. Head coach Shannon Wrigley talks about the importance of team defense and team chemistry.
We really tried a lot of different things tonight. We threw every defense we have at them, and we saw good things in each one of them. So a lot of times this time of year we don't have that many defenses in, and they're certainly not ready to throw out in the game. But that's one thing Coach Graff has really worked on in our practice plans is trying to get our different defenses in early. and we're going to try to disrupt our opponents with different defenses early in the season this year. We're still working on team chemistry. I think it'll get better and better. I think this helped today because we got to play an opponent, and the things that we've been working on against each other worked against someone else, and of course that draws you together.
After an impressive exhibition victory, the team is hoping to be able to use that momentum in the home opener this Saturday against Ball State. Tip-off will be at 3:30 p.m. and can be streamed live on ESPN+. The Troy Volleyball hosts its final homestand against Georgia Southern in a 2-match series tonight and tomorrow night. The Trojan offense continues to look to Tori Hester and Janelle Stumpfeg for guidance. Stumpfeg dished out 81 assists against Texas State. She leads the Sun Belt in assists, averaging 11.02 per set. After the series against Texas State, the Trojans are ranked second in the West heading into the final conference matchup. Ahead of the conference tournament next week, head coach Josh Lauer and the Trojans have played well at the home in the last 5 years, posting a 43-14 record. The Trojans will be in action tonight at 6 p.m. and tomorrow for 4 p.m. Those who cannot watch or cannot be in attendance, the game will be live on ESPN+. And Troy has a path to locking up the berth in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game this weekend with a victory over ULM in addition to losses from other teams. Troy's defense enters the weekend as one of the best in the country, allowing just 3 touchdowns and 33 points in the last 5 games. Both the best marks in the country. Here's head coach John Summerall on that defensive identity.
We have an identity that is a style of play, and schematically we do some things that we're confident in that we think carry over week to week. But then I think you also have to adapt and identify who on the other team can beat you and what do they do that presents problems, and how do you maybe either take away the who or make them not comfortable with what is their best way of playing the game. And so, I talk to y'all a lot about playing my son in basketball in the driveway. He's right-handed. I make him go left. And so he has to go left. He's not very good.
You can see the Trojan defense this Saturday as they take on ULM in Malone Stadium. Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. and will be live on ESPN+. Well, ladies, the end of the volleyball season is here. I'm very excited to be able to see what our volleyball team can do in the Sun Belt tournament.
Absolutely, Dylan. I'll definitely be tuning into ESPN+ to cheer them on.
Yes, and since this is a conference game, there could potentially be a lot riding on it, so I'm excited to see if they can pull off that win. Thank you, Dylan. A Troy professor works to take gamers into the heart of history through a new board game.
Paige Ray learns more about rising waters in tonight's edition of Trojan Talk.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Trojan Talk. I'm Paige Ray. Joining us today is Dr. Scout Bloom. Scout, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So you may notice we have some different table decoration here today. Instead of flowers, we have a board game and we have the board game's creator. So can you walk us through what we have here?
Sure. This is a game called Rising Waters, and it was designed for classroom use. I designed it. It's based on the 1927 Mississippi flood. And players play from the perspective of an African American in the area. And they sort of experience the flood through their eyes and have to deal with, it's sort of a war game against nature from their perspective, but also against the racism that's in the area in Mississippi at the time.
For people who aren't familiar with what African Americans went through during that moment, can you walk us through the history part of that?
Sure. So the 1920s were a really kind of contradictory decade, and there were some great advances made for African Americans. The Harlem Renaissance, for example, was going on up in New York, where there was this outpouring of art and literature and just all kinds of really cool things, a lot of music. But then there was also a really negative side. So the Ku Klux Klan made a big resurgence in the 1920s. It actually became a force in politics. It was a part of the Democratic Party and split the party up. And so there was that element of kind of violence and repression. A lot of African Americans were working as sharecroppers at the time, which basically meant they were doing agricultural work, but a good portion of what they were doing was going to the white landowners. And those sharecropping agreements that they had to sign were pretty restrictive and really were focused on keeping them in debt. So one of the things that happens is that water comes into the game regularly. So we basically have rain coming in as the flood would. So the players have to deal with the water levels in the Mississippi River rising. So the players will build levees to try to protect from the water. What they also have to deal with is the racism from the landowners that comes in the form of cards. Things like threats or use of force. There's also just sort of a more generalized, the card is called race hatred, which was the term that they used for racism at the time. Racism doesn't really come in until, in a widespread way, until people start using it with Hitler in around the late 1930s. So there's this sort of generalized race hatred, but basically they're sort of dealing with the water coming in and how to protect themselves, and also the racism coming in from the landowners, which gives some sort of bad effects happening for the players.
What advantages do games have in the view of history? I mean, you've taken a major historical moment and put it in a game. Why did you feel like you needed to do that, or that was something that should be done?
It's a real good way to sort of bring the students together, but it's also a good way to reinforce content knowledge. I think for this game in particular, I kind of saw that there was a gap, that there weren't very many games about the 1920s. There weren't certainly any games about this particular disaster as well. But most importantly for me, it's very rare to see a game from an African-American perspective. And I was really hoping to sort of diversify some of the perspectives that we see in board games.
Well, Scout, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to see the next episode of History Through Games, which airs here on TrojanVision. I'm ready to see if you and Aaron Taylor can prevent the flood. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Trojan Talk.
A pair of twin brothers who sacrificed fame to serve their country have found it decades later on TikTok.
Jeremy Roth has that and more in today's Take a Look at This.
Take a look at a TikTokin' twosome who are proving when it comes to going viral, age ain't nothing but a number. Meet the Hainline twins, a pair of 76-year-old North Carolina brothers who have found viral fame on TikTok dancing, acting, and pretty much just hamming it up. Decades ago, Wayne and Dwayne had showbiz dreams that were put on hold when Uncle Sam called their number, drafting them to serve during Vietnam. But now, years later, with some prompting from family members, they finally found fame together on TikTok, amassing a following nearly 2 million strong, putting on goofy and good-hearted shows that focus on veterans, faith, and good causes.
This TikTok platform is helping us reach all these people and all over the world. We're going to continue as long as we can and fulfill people's lives as well as ours.
In a high-tech concept destined for stardom, scientists in Japan may soon be launching a wooden satellite into space. Kyoto University researchers have been working on the magnolia-based design for years, finding that wood is surprisingly resilient to the harsh space environment. Now, in hopes of reducing the impact of metal on the Earth's atmosphere, NASA and Japanese officials have planned to launch a polished prototype sometime next year. Finally, watch as Mother Nature puts on quite a show as the Northern Lights were in rare form recently, dazzling stargazers in the UK, Ukraine, Slovakia, and more. You see, Northern Lights are caused when the sun's surface activity emits electrified gas and particles into space that enter the Earth's atmosphere, and you know what? It's not important. Who needs the science when the stunning scenery speaks for itself? For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth.
Well, we are just about out of time, but before we go, Dylan, I know we have some exciting stuff coming up in Trojan Athletics. Can you give us a brief recap?
Yes, finals of volleyball games tonight and tomorrow night, and then we got football at ULM Saturday, so it's been very fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dylan.
And Emily, what can you tell us about weather tomorrow?
Let's go ahead and take a look. Well, starting around 8 a.m., we will have some showers with the temperature being 64 degrees. Around noon, that temperature is going to increase to just under 80 degrees. And then as the day wraps up, we will see an increase in temperature with it being 89 degrees.
Well, I'm not excited for that little bit of rain possibly, but thank you for letting us know, Emily. Now that's all the time we have for Troy Trojan Vision News, and for all of us here at Trojan Vision, thank you for joining us. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also catch our stories and more on the Trojan Vision blog.
Program note, Trojan Vision will not have a show tomorrow because of Veterans Day. Please join us on Monday for more news, sports, and weather. Have a good night.